Welcome to the Alls Authors Podcast. We're so glad you found us. We're the global community of authors writing about Alzheimer's and dementia from personal experience to light the way for others. I'm Mary Ann Shuko, a registered nurse, author, and dementia daughter.
And I'm Christy Byrne-Yates, a licensed educational psychologist, dementia daughter, Al's author, and coach focused on the sandwich generation. Please join us for bi-weekly episodes with our authors as we talk about their dementia journeys, sharing intimate details and painfully obtained knowledge to help others currently on that path.
We hope these stories offer you comfort and support as we strive to break the silence and stigma surrounding a dementia diagnosis.
May one of our authors speak to your experience.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Hi, I'm Susan Landis of Alls Authors. If you're listening to this podcast, you may be looking for more support on your dementia journey. Please visit our website at allsauthors.com, where you'll find hundreds of carefully vetted resources written by caregivers and professionals in Alzheimer's and dementia care. You'll get knowledge, comfort, and support through books, blogs, podcasts, films, and more. That's allsauthors.com. Remember, you are not alone.
Hello and welcome to Alls Authors Books and Chit Chat with Aging and Amazing. Thank you for spending your precious time with us. I'm Mary Ann Shuko, a founder and manager of Alls Authors, the global community of authors writing about Alzheimer's and dementia from personal experience to light the way for others. And I'm the author of Blue Hydrangeas, an Alzheimer's love story. I'd like to introduce some of the members of our team who are with us today. Ruth Stevens, who is the author of the novel Stage 7. Ruth is a member of our acquisitions team specializing in fiction. And we also have a member of the Aging and Amazing team with us today, and that's Kate. So hi, Kate, and hi, Ruth. Today, we're joined by my very special friend and Alls Authors founder, Jean Lee, author of the beautiful memoir, Alzheimer's Daughter. Jean wrote about her years of caring for both of her parents after they were diagnosed with Alzheimer's on the same day. She's a retired third grade teacher and has written a series of middle grade books about her family's dogs. She serves on our board of directors and management team and helps coordinate our custom caregiver collections. She's also an acquisitions editor and manages our Twitter, aka X, social media feed. Welcome to the book club, Jean.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Beautiful introduction. Thank you.
I'm glad you like that. So the first thing I want you to do, Jean, is tell us a little bit more about yourself. I kind of just touched on what you're all about, but I know you have a really interesting story that a lot of people want to hear about. So tell us about your dementia journey.
I am the hometown daughter of my parents who were both diagnosed on the same day with Alzheimer's. And that seems like an unbelievable thing and a devastating thing. And it was, but that diagnosis was not unexpected. Rather, it was sought by my sister and I. So I was a hometown daughter living within a mile of my parents. My only sibling, a sister, lived in Florida. I'm in Cleveland. She was in Florida. she had remained very connected to our family. And despite our age difference of 7 years, we maintained a close relationship because we had children who were about the same age. She was attentive to our parents, came often, at least twice a year, and they were physically healthy people. And we began to notice what we referred to as oddities around age 80. And I would call her and say, well, this happened or that happened. And she encouraged me to begin a journal rather than calling her and trying to fish backward through my brain what had happened. She said, Jean, if you just write these things down, we'll have a chronology and you can open that journal up and we can be accurate about what's happening. So I did. And that journal, then, it was just a spiral bound notebook. I was a third grade teacher, full-time third grade teacher at the time that we began noticing these changes in our parents. And it was a spiral bound notebook that none of my third graders wanted because it was black. And so I was just jotting down basically weights and blood pressures when I started taking them to the doctor. And then I would denote more things about these oddities. That journal became a key piece in their diagnosis because the social worker at the geriatric office that I finally ended up being referred to looked through that, and she looked at the chronology and the frequency and the oddities of these things that were happening. So that was a really great suggestion on my sister's part. And not only for their diagnosis, but after my parents passed, that became the core of my memoir, Alzheimer's Daughter, those happenings.
Great. So what motivated you to publish, to not only write the book, but to publish the book as well?
Wow. I mean, it was something I never pictured myself doing, even though I had been an avid reader all of my life. As an educator, I read to learn things, and I read my way through this odd journey I was having with my parents, but I never pictured myself writing or publishing a book. I wrote this basically for my family, my own children and my sister's children, so that they would know where we were in a history of Alzheimer's disease within our family. I wrote it, I began to think it was worth writing something when a week after my mother died, I was sitting with my dad. And he said, where is that woman I admired? And I thought, wow, this is worth writing and recording. So I started writing while he was still alive. He lived yet another year. And as I was writing, I thought, I want this to be well written for my family. So I joined a local writing group and, went with my binder of what I had written so far. And they began to look at it. And, each month we would do excerpts of people's work. And they said to me, Jean, this has more of a scope than your own family. This is useful for other people to read and understand. And so really, they pushed me along to publish it. And they worked with me so intensely. They helped me flesh out areas. They just helped me add beauty to it. And I couldn't not publish it because they had worked so hard with me. And I worked on it for 4 years. And still, Marianne, to your question, what was what finally made me publish it. When I sat the final day to actually push the publish button, I really thought I would be struck by lightning and die because my parents had been such private people. And I was writing painfully honest things about them, even though I had changed names and places. It was the honest story of what was happening in our lives. And I thought they would be very disappointed in me for revealing this. And I struggled so much with that. I really thought and hoped that the book would grow dust and mold in Amazon's basement and that nobody but my family would purchase it. And people started reading it little by little, and I would see a review come in and I would just want to hide. I'd be like, oh no, they're going to tell me what a terrible daughter I am to have revealed these things about my wonderful parents. And I'd read the review, and it was something like, thank you. Thank you for writing this. Thank you for being honest. And that made me a little more brave and settled in my decision to have published it.
Mm-hmm. And at that time, I don't remember what year it was that you published, but I think it's going on 10 years now.
15, yes.
There really weren't a lot of books available, especially from personal experience, because I know my book was around the same time, and I know doing the research for it, I found it really hard to find any of this type of a book, although now there's, hundreds. So I can see where that would have filled a niche. Ruth has her hand up. Ruth, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Jean, I wanted to say, first of all, I thought it was so commendable that you did that journaling early on. And it makes me wish I had done that with my mother, when she was showing oddities. And I was curious, can you give us an example or two of the early oddities, the first signs that you were seeing?
So I vividly remember the first incident that I wrote about. My mom and dad were big shoppers, and we live in a small town. You had to drive like 30, 40 miles to the mall. And they went to the mall on a weekend night, which was typical for them. And they separated. Mom to look for something. Dad was going to meet her for dinner. And they really didn't realize that they didn't have a firm plan where they were meeting. And my dad thought he was meeting her inside the mall. She thought she was meeting him at a favorite restaurant, which was a walking distance away from the mall outside. And I think it was fall. It was raining. She walked by the side of the road to get to this restaurant. And they were not drinkers at all, but she was sitting at the high tables, she called them, waiting for him, which was the bar. And he was in the mall. And this was way before cell phones or anything. They had completely lost track of one another. Finally, he concluded, well, maybe she thinks I'm at this restaurant, and he drove over there. And indeed, he found her, thankfully. But when they told me about it, they told me this in a laughable way. They just chuckled. Oh, this is so funny. Isn't this so funny, Jean? And I thought, this is not funny at all. Here, my mom in her 80s, hunched and limping at the side of the road, in the rain. So that's really the first incident that I wrote about that was dramatic enough to spur my sister and I into action.
Yeah, I would do it.
Yeah. And that is a common scenario that I think a lot of people face. It's the losing track of somebody or somebody getting lost is a sign that there's something's going on. Mm-hmm. So what's intriguing about your story is the parents being diagnosed on the same day. And I know that's a very dramatic story. So do you like to share that with us?
So, my sister's husband is a doctor and had trained here in Ohio. So he had some colleagues that he had always directed mom and dad to do their health care with them. And my sister, thankfully, was able to email them behind the scenes and say, Jean is bringing mom and dad in for an assessment. So this was just their internist. And so the internist knew things were happening. And he suggested a team approach to their health care. He wanted to refer them to some other members of the team, thinking that would fly with them. Well, my mom and dad, it did not go over well, and they were vehement. We do not want to meet with the committee. That's what they said. And I remember going to pick them up on the day that we had this appointment, and the blinds were closed. The garage door was closed. They wouldn't come to the door to go to this appointment, for further diagnostics. And so my sister, although she was the faraway person, she was always willing to be the bad guy. She would deliver the bad news and let me remain the good and loving caregiver. So I called her, she called them, and she said, you are getting in the car with Jean. She took a day off from her students. Now you're going with her. So they got in the car, and that was the beginning when we met with that geriatric practice of getting the evaluation. And so my mom and dad, positive attitude people, once they got in the car and we got there, they met the social worker, they met the doctor, and, they were put through these, this testing, which they saw it as playtime. They were like, oh, we put together all these puzzles and answered all these silly questions. And they were hugging the evaluators by the time we left. Oh, we can't wait to come back. And I left the journal. I had taken the journal all wrapped up in my coat because I didn't want them to see it. I left it with the social worker, and we returned in 6 weeks for the answers, the evaluation, the results. And my sister was involved on speakerphone, and the doctor wrote. My dad was still working at the time in a family business. And so he told them, first of all, he wrote 3 prescriptions. He said, you will retire in 2 weeks. You will stop driving on the second prescription. On the third one, you will move to a safer place or accept help in your home. And he said, these are your prescriptions because you have both been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And my dad, the peaceful, happy man he was, I've never seen him turn to be so enraged. He just wanted to slug the doctor. It was such an affront to him. And my mother, a generally happy person, took the attitude on like, well, I just want to wash your mouth out with soap, you whippersnapper. How dare you say this about us? And so it was really an experience to be in that. And, we ended up, when we left the office, it was such a commotion and hubbub that my sister was just left on the speakerphone in silence. She didn't know what had happened, and I called her hours later to fill her in on exactly what had happened, as we left. But those 3 prescriptions on that, I still have them.
Mm.
meant something. They meant something written by a doctor. And as we went through trying to get them to move to care, I was able to refer to those prescriptions. Now, remember, you can't drive, and I'd have to check the odometer on their car. Now, remember, we have to look at places for you to move. Now, remember, Dad, in 2 weeks, you won't be going to work anymore. And so those were helpful, but it was painful. It was an experience I'll never forget.
Mm.
But Marianne, I wanted to say, this is going back a couple of questions about there not being much written about this at the time. And being an avid reader myself and reading to learn, without knowing it, Marianne was a huge part of my getting through this because she had written Blue Hydrangeas and I had read it. And I had read Vicky Tapia's Somebody Stole My Iron. And without those books and others of the few that I could find online, I'm not sure what I would have done if I didn't have people telling a story. And although Marianne's is fiction, it was a very personal story. Any of those stories helped me get up in the morning, put my feet on the floor, and get going, keep breathing, and go to work and do what I had to do.
Mm. Thank you so much, Jean. I'm glad that my book was a
Absolutely.
comfort to you, and look what it has led to.
Yes. Yeah.
So I did want to get back to your visit with the doctor, though. Knowing what
Yes.
you know now after, being in All's Authors and working with authors and reading all of these books and being out doing book talks and lectures and things in the community, do you think the doctor handled that situation well, or do you think he could have done something differently?
Boy, I don't know. That's a great question. I mean, I think he did handle it well in those prescriptions. Who
Hmm.
who knew that those three little pieces of paper were going to have that kind of meaning? Um, he bluntly stated, "You both have Alzheimer's," which threw them into a rage. How would a doctor more kindly state that? I'm sure there's a way. Um, but for us, that's the way it happened. What do you think? Are there better ways to have said that?
No, I don't think so. I think that, he was not only was he, delivering, a blow, but he also had solutions. And it wasn't what they wanted to hear. But I think he might, I don't know if he knew it or, it was just serendipitous that he was giving you valuable tools. And your parents were the type where they respected what the doctor said. That's the generation, whatever the doctor said was the gospel. So, I think I can see where that would have been helpful to you. In my own situation, my stepfather, when we went and did the same appointments and the same visits, and he didn't even really even have an awareness of what they were even talking about at that point. He just would say, I'm not sick, I'm not sick, so, but, I mean, what's common though is that he gave you those three slips of paper, but you weren't directed to what to do or where to go next, were you?
This is so true, Marianne. I remember as we were leaving and everything was topsy-turvy in an upheaval. My mom and dad were pretty much rushing out of the office, and I was following along. And I remember saying to him, what do I do now? What if I can't get them to do this? And he said, well, you could seek guardianship.
Mm.
He said, but it's messy.
Mm.
Don't go there if you don't have to. And, I was just like, wow, the bottom has dropped out here. I'm not sure how to handle this. Fortunately, my daughter had come along with us to that appointment, and she was expecting her first child, my first grandchild, their first great grandchild. So having her along as a buffer in the car going home was we stopped to eat, and it was just kind of, okay, life is not over. Things are different here. And she had such a calm and soft and logical way of thinking about, there are lots of places close to me where you could be, because we were in this very small town and we were going to have to go to a larger town for them to move to someplace with care. And she just, I think because she was their grandchild, they did not want to show that enraged part of themselves to her. And it just helped bring that down.
Hmm. That must have been helpful. Ruth, you have your hand up again. Do you have another comment or question?
Yeah, just building on what you were both talking about. My situation with my mother was more like yours, Mary Ann's. She was never told she had Alzheimer's. But by the time, things kind of happened fast with her. It felt like she'd fallen off a cliff. And at the point where she was diagnosed, her awareness was really very low. There wouldn't have been a benefit in telling her, and she probably wouldn't have remembered anyway. So I think it just really depends on the situation. And you would hope sometimes that maybe the doctor would consult with you in that case, and before just dropping the bomb like that. But maybe it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there is a right way or a wrong way. I mean, speaking directly to the people themselves, especially if they have the capacity to understand, is probably the right thing to do.
Mhm.
He probably, I don't know, did he know them as well, this doctor, or was he new? So
No,
he didn't
no,
know.
this was our second visit with
Oh,
him.
okay. So
And the
he
first
didn't know they
was
would
just
flip out.
briefly, hello, go play games with these people.
Oh, no. Yeah. So it wasn't like, the old GP that knew them for years and would know
No.
what kind of reaction that
No.
they might expect. But they also did not give a very good, they were out of character. Their reactions were out of character from
Yes.
what you were saying. Yeah. So another interesting part of your story, Jean, and that a lot of caregivers or people new on the dementia journey might not realize, is how many moves were involved. So, I mean, the doctor said they needed to move somewhere. Tell us
Yes.
that story.
So we tried to get them into a Masonic community. My dad was a Mason, and we thought, okay, this and he did. That's the only reason they moved there, was he thought his dues had helped build this place. It's Masonic. Okay, we'll go. But it took us 18 months to get them in there, to get them to agree to go, and then no, they'd back out. Okay, we'll go. No, one of them would back out. And it was a gruesome time of still dragging our feet, getting a person in the home to try to help sustain them until they made this decision. And it was long, drawn out until we got them into that. And when we moved them, we were absolutely clear. We presented the diagnosis to the place that we were moving them to. Full transparency, they had both been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. But they moved into an independent apartment with the assurance that, oh, this is going to be fine. We'll move them to assisted when they can't any longer handle independent. Well, they then lasted about 18 months in the independent, and during that time had health issues like a tooth pulled, antibiotics were needed, that kind of thing. And it was not enough support to have them in independent, because I'd have to call from work. Did you take the pill? You have to take the pill. There was no support with medicine or anything like that. So the decision was made, they're not making it here in independent. We have to move them to assisted. That lasted about another 6 months. in an okay fashion. And then I got a call from the facility. We need to have a conference. And I thought, oh, as a teacher, I know that if I call for an unexpected conference with parents, it is never a good thing. So I was going and realizing this was not going to be a happy talk. They were not getting a gold star for anything. So when I got there, again, my sister was on speakerphone, and there were 6 people around the table from that facility facing me, saying, this is not working. You're going to have to move them elsewhere. So that would be my one regret, is that when we moved them there, they did not have a designated memory care facility, a secure memory unit. And we just thought, oh, they're going to be able to stay here, assisted living will be fine. But that did not prove to be the case. So they said, and honestly, I appreciated them being very honest with me, because I knew they were looking out for my parents' best interest. They did not want them to be hurt there. There were stairs. They just had to move. But I begged them. I said, can you keep them for one more week? Because Christmas break was coming up. And I thought, okay, I can handle that move then. And I can get my sister here to help with it. So they said, well, we don't know. So then I hired a separate caregiver to come in and stay with them in assisted living for that week until I could get them out of there. And that was almost worse, because they hated having somebody else there with them, and they would run and hide to avoid this person. So they were almost in more danger then. But my sister came, and I visited places that had secure memory care units, found one. My sister came, we moved them, and that was just so sad, so sad, because we couldn't tell them ahead of time. They wouldn't have remembered it, and it just would have upset them. And I remember my sister arrived on a Friday night. Saturday morning, we appear at their door, and we go in, sit down, talk just briefly about Christmas, in a week. And we say, now we're going somewhere, and we get them up and bundle them in their coats and walk them out the door and walk them into the other place and leave them. The staff there said, it's okay, leave them, they'll be fine. And so we kept coming back over the weekend. We were cleaning out that apartment, basically dismantling it. We had, thank goodness for Salvation Army, they came and took stuff for us. And we'd go back and check on them. And for the first few times we went back to check on them, they were still sitting in their room with their coats on. They were in their coats on. And they said, we don't live here. Our daughters are coming to get us. And it was just, it was sad, very sad. They eventually adjusted to the secure unit. And I think that the word secure, the security of it, helped them feel more stable, less discombobulated all over the place. So, but it was hard.
Yeah, that is quite a story. And, I have you share that with us and with the listeners, because so many people don't understand that, they may make a move with their family member, their person, thinking that, that's done. And yet there can be many more moves yet to come. Even if you're in a memory care place, they may not like it there or be problematic, or, so many different things can happen. And we've all heard stories with people having to change, several times during this period. And that's really really stressful for everyone involved, especially the person being moved, but for the families too, because it's not easy moving somebody, Anybody who's had to move around a lot knows that. But during when they moved out of their home, you had to take care of the clean out. And in that clean out, you found some wonderful things. Why don't you tell us about that?
So I do have to say that that clean out of the house that they had lived in for 40 years, those were the darkest days, the darkest times of my journey, because I was still working full time and I'd go right after school to get there and clean through. It was pretty much a hoarding situation where every report card of mine, every school project, every Cool Whip container and butter lid, was molding in the basement. And so it was just fill trash bags, fill trash bags.
Mm.
And in the process, I knew that there were some things of value that shouldn't go. But what were they? I wished that the items I was looking at had a note attached to them. We got this here or there, or your dad gave this to me on our first date, or whatever, this little piece of costume jewelry or whatever. It would have been so helpful had I known, but everything was just going in the trash. I, at one point, when I got deep into one closet, I found a little gold box in the corner of the closet. It was a box that like you would buy Hallmark cards in. And it had gold foil on the top of it. I had never seen this box before. And I pulled it out of the closet and something was jingling inside of it. So I opened it and my dad's dog tags were on the top. And there were letters, envelopes, stacked like little files in a mini file cabinet. And I started looking through them, and they were my parents' World War II love letters. And it was just, I was completely struck by, oh my gosh, I never knew these existed. And look what I have here. But yet I was reluctant to read them because I thought they were so private. And I talked to my sister about them. I closed the box up. I took it to my own house. I did not go through them and read them. Just looked at a couple and kept them at my house until my sister came. We looked at the box together, looked at a couple of them, and we decided these are not for our eyes. These were personal. We wouldn't want anybody reading letters that we had written to our husbands or back and forth when we were dating. So we took them to the facility where mom and dad were. And when we would go, we'd kind of see the box, like the lid off of it or whatever. It was as though they had enjoyed them, going through them. And that's what we intended. We wanted them to. After my dad died, he died a year later than my mom. My sister and I were cleaning out his room for the final time, his very few possessions that he was left with. And okay, here's the gold box. What do we do with it? We brought it home. This was after his funeral. And we still remained committed. No, we're not going to read these. And we actually stood over my trash can and dumped them in the trash. And then my sister said, let's just peek. And so we started pulling them out and pulled them out of the envelopes and put them in chronological order and found them so intriguing. They wrote about things like my dad, they wrote about things that couples today would text about. I got a haircut for such and such, or I won this much at the poker game last night, and it's in the new house account, but yet they use this eloquent way of talking, like my dad would open his letter with something like, "My dearest darling," or just the beautiful language that they used to show how much they were in love. So we kept the letters, and I was writing Alzheimer's daughter, but didn't really see them connected to Alzheimer's daughter. I just thought, wow, I've got to save these letters. And I told my sister, I'll save them for you. You know, you can have the letters. And then I kept working on the memoir daily. After work, I'd come home and I'd have these thoughts. I'd put them in the memoir. And then I thought, maybe those letters could be a part of my memoir. And so, reading them all in chronological order, I used them as chapter beginnings for the book. And I think their writing is so much more beautiful than my own. And it gives me great peace that their words and their language are used in this book. And readers have said that it shows their commitment from the very beginning that held them together through this decline and their eventual passing. But so on the front cover is one of the letters, and these two little dots are pennies because in World War II, I mean, everything was used and used until it was completely used. So they would send the same piece of paper back and forth in the mail to each other, and they'd write on the back of it or on the side of it or whatever until it was completely full. And so my dad writes to my mom. They don't know at this point how long World War II is going to go on. The newspapers are saying it could take 20 years. And he's saying to my mom, maybe we shouldn't wait till the end of the war. For 2 cents, maybe we should get married on a furlough weekend. And so she takes that same piece of paper and puts 2 pennies. They actually were kind of woven into cutouts in the paper here. And she said, 2 cents is all you need. I'm sending it now, And so their wedding was 10 people on his next furlough weekend, their parents and siblings included. And my mom did not wear a white dress. It was just a nice dress she would have worn to church. And those pennies were the thing that made it happen. And they were married for 66 years until she passed.
Such a beautiful story. And it's just so reminiscent of that time and the innocence,
Can
that
I
we
read
don't.
you the first one?
I would love it if you could read that. That was my next question.
The story behind this first letter is that, they were two hometown kids and they had known of each other. They had gone to high school together, but had not dated. And my dad was going off to the army. And the story before that was that they were both dating other people and they had gone to an amusement park together. And my mother's boyfriend and my dad's girlfriend did not want to go on the roller coaster together. My dad called it the roly coaster, the roly coaster. So he and my mom went on the roly coaster, and he kissed her in the tunnel of love. And so she must have thought, hey, he's a pretty nice guy. And what am I missing here? I'm gonna dump the other guy. So she writes to him after he's gone to the army. This was in 1941. She said, "Dearest Ed, I don't know why, but it seems so much easier to tell you in writing how much you mean to me. You know there isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. In these uncertain times, everyone needs someone to live for, to dream about. Without this, we're lost. Ed, I love you with all my heart. I'd consider it an honor if you'd allow me to wait for you until the war is over. Why couldn't I have realized and told you about my feelings in person before you left for the army. I am so very sure now. Lovingly, Ibby.
So cute.
That's
I
what
love
started
it.
the flame.
Well, I mean, she was pretty gutsy, your mom, putting it
She
out there like
was.
that. I mean, you don't even know if they would even get the letter, right? You wouldn't even
Yeah.
know. They didn't even know. So we have a question here for you from Yossi. She says, your parents' bond was so moving, even as their memories faded. What do you think kept them so connected during those hard times? Also, those love letters were so special. How did you choose what to share and what to keep private?
Actually, I shared just about all of it.
Mhm.
You know, there was not much that I kept private in those letters. But back to the original part of what kept them during those hard times. I wonder that because really, I, you sometimes don't put these pieces together until way later about your lineage. But from that first letter that my mom wrote in 1941, it was November of 1941. They got married in January of 1944. So that was end of 41, 42, 43, beginning of 44, like 2.5 years. They only came to know one another through letters back and forth and an occasional furlough here and there. So I don't know what held them together. I think maybe having been from the same hometown, maybe having known one another's families and knowing they could trust one another's families, building a life together after World War II. I think that was a time of God and country, you know.
Mhm.
So that is such a good question. But they were such a team, Yossi. They, even through the decline of Alzheimer's, they went through that hand in hand, side by side, just like they'd gone through everything else in life. Never did my mom say, your dad is gliding through stop signs, or never did dad say, she doesn't remember how to start the washing machine. They just we're fine, go away, leave us alone.
It was them against the world.
Yes, it was.
That's what makes that experience with the two parents together, that they were so bonded, so difficult. You didn't have your mom to help you with your dad or vice versa. Usually that's the situation. You have one parent and then you're the daughter, you're helping the other parent. But here it was just the two of them against the world. And it's just an amazing story. Thank you so much. We had a question here from Roseanne, who had to leave, but she did write. I also wrote a book about taking care of my mom with Alzheimer's, and sometimes I'd get ideas to put in the book in the middle of the night. Hubby and I have a pad behind our bed so I could jot ideas down. Did you have a set time during the day or night when you'd write?
Oh, wow. I remember the pad by my bedside, and I wouldn't even turn the light on. I'd just pick up the pencil or the pen and write it. And I knew in the morning it would be enough to jog my memory. And as far as a set time, I had about a half-hour drive to work and a half-hour drive home from work. Uh, Work for me took me back to my hometown, which took me right past the church that I grew up in with my parents, the cemetery where they were buried. And so there were very deep thoughts on that drive to work, and I would get this beautiful language that would come as I was driving, and I'd think, oh, I'll remember that. I'll remember that. I'll add it tonight when I get home. And the third grade day with 25 to 38 9-year-olds would come upon me, and I'll be darned if I could remember that beautiful language on the way home. So I ended up buying a little voice recorder. Now you could just do this on your phone. But on my drive to work in the morning, when these beautiful thoughts and beautiful words would come to me, I would just speak them into the voice recorder. And then when I got home, I would be able, it would be right there for me to recall, and I'd be able to write about that thought.
That's great. So where can people find your book?
Well, on Amazon for sure, on allsauthors.com. So,
and where can we find you on social media?
So I have a Facebook page, alzheimersdaughter.com, and I am on also personally on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and my profile there is Jean Lee 18 on each of those.
Wonderful. Let's see. I have a couple comments here from Kate. That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing your parents' story.
Thank you,
Yossi says, such a powerful example of lasting love. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Yossi.
Did you have any final words to leave with the audience?
Yes, I do. And they are to bring this to a conclusion and to my healing after the guilt of having published this. It is coming together with Marianne and Vicki and starting All's Authors that brought healing to me. They gave me validation for what I had written. And we believe in All's Authors with Ruth and everyone that we bring healing to others through the stories, the personal experiences that we bring.
That is so true. Thank you so much, Jean. Okay, so I want to thank everyone for attending Aging and Amazing's Books and Chit Chat with All's Authors. This is the last of our book club meetings this year. As you may have heard, we're celebrating our 10th anniversary and have some special things planned. We'll be doing more of our virtual discussions after a summer break, and in the fall, we're hosting a film festival, a first for us, and have 4 films scheduled. Details will be in our newsletter, so if you want to be among the first to know everything new at All's Authors, be sure to subscribe. Sign up at allsauthors.com, then check your inbox every other week or so for our news, introducing our latest author, podcast, special events, and more. And be sure to visit our blog, podcast, and shop at allsauthors.com to find more resources for your dementia journey. We've got some lovely gifts for caregivers, including our books and our poetry anthology, as well as some branded clothing and accessories to show your support for All's Authors. You can also follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter X, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and now Blue Sky, where we share a wealth of resources for the dementia journey. Remember, you are not alone. One can sing a lonely song, but we chose to form a choir and create harmony. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening to Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia, an All's Authors podcast. For more details on this episode, please see the show notes. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave a review and subscribe to it on whichever platform you use to listen to your favorite podcasts. For more information on All's Authors, please visit allsauthors.com. While you're there, be sure to browse our online bookstore, where you will find hundreds of carefully vetted books on Alzheimer's and dementia. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Please email your thoughts on the podcast to allsauthors@gmail.com. We are a 501c3 charitable organization, totally reliant on donations to do what we do. If our authors' stories move you, please consider contributing to our cause. Remember, you are not alone. One can sing a lonely song, but we chose to form a choir and create harmony.
I'm Vicki Tapia from All's Authors. If you enjoy the podcast, you'll enjoy reading more of our authors' stories in one of our anthologies, Alzheimer's and Dementia Caregiving Stories. Each volume offers a wealth of information and a preview of each title to help you pick the perfect resource. You'll find them on our free resources page at allsauthors.com. with a variety of caregiver tip sheets. So after the podcast, take a few minutes to check it out. Remember, you are not alone.